Welcome to the Learning Can't Wait podcast, a Full Mind production. At Full Mind, our vision is to ensure every child has access to an exceptional education. Each episode, we will be joined by pathfinders within and around the education space who are bringing about transformational change on behalf of deserving students. I am your host, Hayley Spira-Bauer. Welcome back, everybody, to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. I am so honored to introduce our next guest. We have Wendell Sumter, retired education executive and new author of the incredible book, Dirt Road Destiny. Welcome, Wendell.
Thank you. Thank you. I am so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to have this opportunity to share and to speak with you and all of your viewers and subscribers. So I'm excited about this opportunity. More importantly, excited because I get to share my experience in hopes that others will be encouraged, enlightened, feel supported, and believe in their own destinies.
I love that. And obviously, you could tell I'm excited about something. That little moniker that I used to introduce you, retired educator,
Yay,
is new.
retired.
Congratulations. So I know that you're going to tell us your story, but we're talking 36 years in education. Is that correct?
36 years in education. Can you believe that?
And I know
I
it's not over. Your journey's not over, but
know.
wow, that is an incredible, incredible number and an incredible, incredible legacy. And I'm so happy for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I keep asking myself, like, how is it that I'm 36 years old and I've been in education for 36 years? I can't
Yeah,
make that,
totally.
it doesn't add up.
Yeah, the math isn't
The math
mathing,
is
but
not mathing.
right,
No.
right, right, right. Amazing. Well, Wendell, I'd love you to kick us off by telling everybody how you came to be the personal and professional version of yourself.
Well, here it is. I think the book Dirt Road Destiny kind of highlights some of that in my own life. I um, started off in the rural parts of the state of South Carolina in a little small town called Hopkins, South Carolina. And growing up in Hopkins, South Carolina, I went to Hopkins Elementary, Hopkins Middle School, and then Lower Richland High School, which were all in this rural town in Hopkins, where our dirt roads were the places we played and made mud pies and all those wonderful things, and growing up around my grandmother's house and my family and all of those things. I think for me, growing up, I kind of always looked up to the adults that were around me. And some of those adults that were around me were so instrumental in providing me what I believe to be a solid foundation. And it was really, we often talk about it takes a village, but it really was um, that type of support that I had with the entire village. So it wasn't just my mom, or it wasn't just my grandmother, or it wasn't just my grandparents or anything like that. I think more importantly, it was everybody. And growing up, I had an aunt who taught elementary school. And so she had gone to college, and she taught elementary school. And every single summer that I can remember, from probably when I was in first grade up until middle school, my aunt would take me with her to prepare her classroom for the students coming back in the fall. And that was every year. And so when it came time for me to make decisions about what I wanted to do in life, I felt like it was an educator. I felt like that experience that I had with her. She was always a very humble person, but very smart, and so she, just encouraged me to, And she. The funny thing, Hayley, is that she never said become a teacher. She never uttered the words, you should become a teacher. It was the example that she provided. It was the opportunity that she provided for me during those times that I think shaped me. Of course, my family and my grandparents were very important to me as well. And all of those things, I believe, shaped who I was. I had aunts who lived in New York City. So whenever my grandparents would take me to New York, I just thought I was on top of the world. Because New
Right.
York is such a, and as a little kid, and I go back now when I go to New York and I still reminisce about those times that I had the opportunity to travel to New York and see my aunts that lived there and just be inspired as well.
So often actions speak louder than words, and it sounds like in your background that was absolutely true. Watching great educators live their truth and really shape young lives inspired you. The title of your book, Wendell, is Dirt Road Destiny. What does destiny mean to you in that phrase? And was there a moment you actually felt it, or is it something that you only recognize looking backward?
I think I would probably say that it was something that as I reflected um, upon everything that happened in my life, I really felt like um, destiny was something that um, was instilled in me. It was something that gave me vision and allowed me to um, have goals and aspirations. And when you're young, you don't really think of it as destiny. But I think as I matured and as I took that moment to reflect back on all of the things that happened in my life, all of the good, the bad, and the ugly, the adversities, all of those things played a role in destiny. So I think when we think about destiny, we talk about the trajectory of our lives. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes we often talk about, do you have a vision for your life, right? However, with that vision, sometimes we're always looking at the end game, like, oh, this is going to be the perfect scenario, perfect life, and it's going to end like a fairy tale, where that is not the truth. Destiny to me includes all of those things in our lives that lead up to who we were ultimately created to be.
That's very powerful, Wendell, and it really speaks to me how you've talked about the path people are intended to be on. In your own background, this book feels like a memoir and a leadership book. Which book were you writing first? Was it the memoir or the leadership book?
That's a really good question. I think if I were to really focus on which one came first, the leadership or the memoir, I really think it started out honestly about leadership and how my you know experiences led to the leader that I became. So it was almost as if I started at, you're a leader, this is where you are, and then I had to go back and say, how did you get here? What steps did it take for you to get to this place where you are? And that's where I started looking back over my life and thinking about all of the things that had occurred and was like, wait a minute, okay, all of these things had to happen, all these things had to occur in order for me to have reached the point that I did in school leadership. So I think that's where I started. I started with the leadership because I wanted to focus. At first it was about the successes when I was a principal and how my school became a national distinguished Title I school for closing the achievement gap. And I wanted to talk about, all of the successes that I had as a school leader and becoming a Microsoft Pathfinder school and all of those things. But I soon realized that none of that would have been possible without everything that happened before, the foundations that were laid, the things that I had to when I had to believe in myself. When in the book I talk about the teacher who said to me in the middle of class, that said to me, "You're not college material." I was in a British literature classroom, and in front of all of my classmates, this teacher said that.
Wow.
And it was something that I never forgot. We often say, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words never." You remember we kids, we would always
Yeah.
say that.
Yes.
Words will
Yeah.
never hurt me. Well, that's not true.
Right. Right.
Words do hurt us. And so,
Absolutely.
I think that was important. Or, I talk about in the book when I was misplaced in a special ed classroom. And at the time, I didn't really kind of take up for myself. I just felt like I was a high school freshman and I was in this class and I was, thinking I was doing the right thing. I had a cousin in the classroom who said to the teacher, man, he doesn't belong in this classroom. And she looked at him and was like, "What do you mean?" No, he doesn't belong to this class. He's too smart for this class. Da, da, da. And at the time, I'm thinking it's just a reading class. I didn't realize, wait a minute, you're really literally in a special needs class. And nothing's wrong with that if that's something that you need as a student.
Right.
But she tested me. And because my cousin spoke up in that classroom, she found out that I wasn't supposed to be in that classroom. They made a mistake and placed me in the wrong class. So I think all of those things kind of helped shape the leader that I became when I led schools, the care and concern about students and making sure that students were successful and providing the best uh, environment possible for student learning. So I think that's where I started. I started it initially with okay, these are the successes, but what did it take to get you there? I started with the leadership, I believe.
Wow. Every leader has an adversity story, and so often that adversity story shapes how they treat others later in their life and how they choose their path. And you just shared one adversity story, and the title of your book really is another adversity story in and of itself. What would you say is the most useful thing that ever happened to you in your early years that shaped who you are as a professional?
Ooh, that's a good one. Early on. Well, I think okay, and I didn't put this in the book.
We're getting an exclusive.
You're getting an exclusive. I was a teacher. I was a first, second year teacher. Um, and um, when I was that first and second year teacher, my mom she ended up having a heart attack. And
Sorry to hear
so, yes, yes. And it was, a massive heart attack. And so I had taken off some days, a week or so to be at the hospital to support her and to try to, be there for her. And my principal at the time, um, I came back to school. My principal at the time said to me, um, you don't need to be at the hospital every single day. You can't do any more than what the doctors can do, and you just da da da. And of course, that rubbed me the wrong way. And
Yes.
so I was just floored, you know. But my response to her was that I only have one mother,
Yes.
and I'm going to do what I can to support my mother. And so after that, she wrote me up, wrote a little note saying I was absent a lot. Da, da, da. And mind you, what I had to do was I had to literally get a note from the doctor to say that I was the primary caretaker for my mom, for this principal. There was no empathy. There was no concern about, you know, taking care of your family and making sure that you take care of yourself because self-care is so important. And that's
Yeah.
what I've learned about that. And so um, when the end of the year came and the test scores of my students came back, I was in the office and she came up to the counter and she said, "I got your scores back from your class." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she said, "Your class was the best class in the whole school." And I said, "Oh, thank you." And then she says, "Well, you better be glad because you were out with your mom." And I'm like, "Seriously?"
That's the
So
takeaway for her.
that's the takeaway from for you, but it taught me something very important. It taught me that I did not want to be that kind of leader.
Mm,
The kind of leader that only is concerned about the bottom line. I
right.
want to be the leader that's concerned about the individual person. I want to have empathy. I want to hold people accountable. I want to have a level of excellence, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I take care of my people. Because when I take care of my people, the people will take care of my students, or the people will take care of my staff. So I think that was very important to me, and it's interesting because throughout the trajectory of my career and my 36 years, I was met with several different things similar to that. But I always maintained who I was as an individual or person. For example, I had a superintendent when my mom died. I had to be out. My mom ended up not only having the heart attack, but several years later, she had cancer. And
Mm.
so I had to be out for my mom to take care of her. She had cancer or whatever. And in 2013, unfortunately, she passed away. Well, in my particular district at that time, the superintendent said to several people that, oh, well, I'm glad his mother's gone now. Now he can come to work.
Oh my goodness gracious.
That was probably the worst thing that somebody could ever say, And
Yes.
so it's things like that, I think, that really gave me the caring heart, the caring spirit, the caring character, and not to the point that you allow people to do what they want to do. I think you still hold people accountable. You still hold people, responsible. But at the same time, you do have a level of empathy and concern for the lives of people.
I can personally attest to your caring nature just from my experience working with you over the years. But I'm so sorry that happened to you. And unfortunately, if it happened to you, it definitely happened to others in your building. And I know that story well. So, you talk a lot about building culture from the ground up. This is obviously an example of when culture was detrimental and it really dramatically impacted a team member. What's the difference between a culture a leader designs on paper and a culture that's actually alive in a building?
Yeah, I think it's so important that as leaders, whether it's in the education space or wherever, I think it's important that we build the kind of culture that's a supportive culture. And one of the things that I think um, I really like about culture is creating an environment where people want to remain in your district or in your organization. And I think one of the things for me is whenever I found out that there was someone in my community or in my school building or whatever that did not like me. I mean, because let's face it, everybody doesn't like you, right? As much as we want people to like us and all that kind of stuff, the reality is everybody doesn't like us all the time. And so I was trying to find ways, how do I motivate those people who don't like you? What do you do to encourage them? Because what I found is that um, when you build a culture of excellence and a culture where people want to be a part of your um, organization or your school, they don't want to leave because you built that kind of culture for them. And one of the things that did, I think, as a school leader, um, with culture was making sure that everybody understood the importance of supporting each other. Give them the motivation is what I call it in the book. That's one of the things that I think led to some success in my particular schools was making sure that we set challenges, that we provide incentives, that we provide follow through, and that we provide and make it a memorable experience where people will always remember what you brought to the table in regards to building that culture. And in building a culture as well, I think it's important to make sure that you understand that you have to have a balanced life. And I think a lot of times in this thing called life, we are so focused on the business side of life that we don't have an opportunity to just enjoy life. And so some of the things that we talk about in the book about having a balanced life plan is don't waste your time worrying about things you can't control. You can't fight every battle. Choose the ones which are worth fighting and let the others go. Thinking about surrounding yourself with good people because goodness is contagious. Don't love from your heart only, love from your head also. And then live your life to the fullest because tomorrow is not promised. And so those are just things that I think are important when it comes to, building the kind of culture and building culture from the ground up. When you become a leader in a building, one of the first things you want to do is take the temperature of the building. What's happening? Are people happy? Are people excited? Are people engaged, or are they just there? And then and then from there, that's when you build that culture by showing care, compassion, empathy, but then also having a high level of expectation.
Absolutely. And, knowing where you're starting and where you want to go is part of the battle. Let's talk a little bit about your win them over framework. In plain terms, for someone who's never read the book, what is it and what problem were you actually trying to solve when you built it?
All right, so win them over. It's funny. So win them over was born out of the adversity I faced when I left the middle school and went and became a principal at the elementary school. Well, I had this group of parents who felt like I was, turning the elementary school into the middle school, and kids couldn't have fun, and the parent I remember so vividly saying, you're turning the school into a jail. The kids can't even have fun, da da da. So it was at that point that I decided, okay, what do I need to do to not continue um, arguing and proving my point with this particular group of parents? How do I win them over? What can I do to win these parents over? And so that's what we talk about. And it's talking about listening, making sure that we hear the concerns of the parents or whoever without being defensive. you know um and when I talk about being defensive, sometimes we create programs, we create processes, procedures, and routines, and we want the kids to follow it, and we want everything to go right. And so sometimes when we think we have created that vision and we feel like, oh, well, this is the best thing, sometimes we get defensive. We want to defend that which we've created. But I think it's important to listen without being defensive. Valuing the person's perspective, even if you disagree. Maybe there's something that they'll say that will cause you to reflect and say, you know what? You're absolutely right. I think this would work better. And then invite them, bring them into the process and give them ownership of what's happening. Empower them, provide opportunities for meaningful contributions, and then celebrate and acknowledge their growth and partnership publicly. Now, here's the thing with this particular parent that I had who was really adamant about me turning this elementary school into a prison, she thought. Um, I called her in my office one day and we sat down and we had a talk and I explained things to her. I told her where I was trying to take the school and take the students. And she said, I really thank you for just sitting down and having this conversation with me. I want you to know that later on, that parent became one of the biggest cheerleaders of the school. I mean, to the
I
point
love
that she would,
that.
yes, to the point that she would come and she would get flyers. She would go knock on doors to make sure that parents come to the PTO meetings or the school improvement council meetings. She would stand at the Piggly Wiggly and say, you all need to come hear what's happening at the school. I mean, it was a phenomenal shift in that community because this one parent who I could have disregarded, right? I could have said, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Oh, I'm the school leader. We got this. I could have done all of those things. But if the goal was to support not just my school, but the entire community and to support the students I serve, I thought it was important to win them over. And so We had what we call the State of the School Symposium. After that, I had her help me plan that. We had over 150 parents and community leaders who came for that celebration. It was just wonderful, and from that point on, again, she was a support until I left the school. She was a major supporter of what we did at that school.
I love a story like that where you really took the time to invest in your people so that they could invest in the community. And that is such a good illustration of your win them over framework and how really you can solve from the ground up issues that are important to building a great, great school community.
Absolutely. And one of the quotes from my book, as we're sitting here talking, I'm just, you know, um, yeah, one of the quotes from my book is this: leadership isn't about winning arguments, it's about winning hearts. Leadership isn't about winning arguments, it's about winning hearts.
Love
Um,
that.
and so I just think that that's, when it's who I am. And I
Yes.
feel like when you do that, when you win hearts, you win people. And that way your school, and then, you end up, kissing a pig like I did, because your students end up being the highest, having the highest test scores in the entire school district. And it's because you build that culture of excellence. And then what I found, Hayley, was that people who were doing their job in that building, people who were focused on student achievement and focused on student success, they were the ones who would tell me, Mr. Sumter, we can't keep this person in this building, or people would leave because they couldn't handle the level of excellence that was expected at that particular school. But it helped us, like I said, become a national Title I distinguished school.
Incredible. Wendell, I know that it's hard to imagine being at the end of our conversation, but we're here. So I wonder what advice you would give a teacher who's starting their career today.
Well, interesting. I recently just posted a video clip of my book, Dirt Road Destiny, and I put on there, on the post, I put, what is one thing that a teacher or educator or mentor has ever said to you that you remember this day? What did a teacher or mentor say to you that you will never forget? Because mine was that you're not college material.
Right.
I have a teacher who, I know this particular person, and she put the comment on my post just this morning. And she said, a professor who told me that I would never make it as a teacher and I might as well quit.
Oh,
Wow. And when I tell you that this particular educator was one of the top educators in my building,
wow.
I mean, one of the top educators in my building. And I would have never known that she had gone through that. Like, I would have never known that she had that experience. She never said it, she never articulated to me before. Just today, when I made this post, she said, a professor told me I would never make it as a teacher and I might as well quit. I think if I were to leave anything with your listeners, it would simply be to believe in the abilities that God has given you to be who He created you to be. Believe in yourself, trust the process, and know that great destiny awaits. Because if we listened to every critic who ever said anything negative about us or to us, we would never be the people we are today.
Wendell, what an important message to end the conversation. You have shared a small part of your new book, Dirt Road Destiny, and I'm so grateful you did. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
And thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thanks for listening to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and share this episode. Be the first to know when we have a new episode by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have a suggestion for an episode, email us at podcast@fullmindlearning.com.